Aloha and welcome to Kupunaho, that is New Kupuna, a wordplay on Kapunaho. I'm Chris Yano, your host, and this is a talk story podcast by, for, and about us, the Punahou class of 69. It's a privilege to reach this age and realize, hey, we are the Kupuna now. What kinds of responsibilities do we take on in this position, and what kind of legacy might we, as Kupunaho, offer? Our guest today is Rachel Keala O'Sullivan, our very own Olympian, as she took to the world stage during our senior year when she was 17 years old. She was the youngest member on the U.S. diving team at the time and became the first Hawaii medalist since weightlifter Tamikono in 1960. And since then, she has shared her knowledge as diving coach at Iolani, Punahou, Kamehameha, and other schools. She's also retired, and I understand she's enjoying her 13 grandchildren. So welcome, Keala.
Thank you.
It's hard to think of you without thinking of the Olympics. So pardon me if you've heard these questions over and over, because I'm sure when you're in that kind of spotlight, you get interviewed a lot. So with apologies, what was it like for you to occupy, that global stage of the Olympics at such a young age, 17? And when you were at 17, how did you make the switch between that large stage and being a regular old student at Punahou, papers to write, tests to take, et cetera, et cetera? So how did you handle it all?
I guess to explain it better, I need to go back a little bit as to how it started. When I was in, I think, the 8th grade, my coach came up to me, Wally Nakamoto, and he said, you're getting pretty good. Would you like, I think we can practice really hard and we can go to the Olympics. And he said, do you want to do that? And I said, oh, okay.
Just like that?
Just like that. And on the way home, I said to my dad, Dad, what's the Olympics? And he said, you don't know what it is? I said, well, you know what, Dad, we don't have a TV. And, it's not exactly in the newspapers all the time. I said, so I really don't know what it is. And so he thought about it and he said, okay, it's just a diving meet. That's all. He said, with more people. He said, the format of the meet is pretty much the same. They make your announcement and you do your dive and they score you. He said, the only difference between you diving at Punahou as opposed to diving in the Olympics is there's more people and more judges. And I said, oh, no sweat, I can do that. Well, as we started training 6-7 days a week before the Olympic trials, I was working out like 8 hours a day. Throughout the day, like 2.5 hours in the morning, 2.5 hours in the afternoon, maybe 3 hours at night. And so training was grueling. And
was this at the Punahou pool?
It was, I wasn't diving at the Punahou pool at that time. My coach, Wally Nakamoto, was coaching at Midpack. So I would train there in the morning. In the afternoon, sometimes at Punahou, but in the summer is when we were doing our intense training. But yeah, we trained a lot, and one day I just felt so beat up. It was so hard. My body just hurt everywhere. And I said to my dad, I said, this better be worth it, because I am really beat up. I'm tired. And he goes, yeah, I think it might be, So that's kind of how it started. So long story short, I won the Olympic trials, and so that's how I made the team. And my parents didn't make a big deal about it. When I got home, they said, okay, you got your chores to do. Don't forget your homework, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I said, okay. See, I was the youngest of 5, and my siblings were very good athletes as well. So we had a bookshelf with just all their medals and all their trophies and stuff. And when I came home with my little medals, I asked my brother, I went, there's no room. So he went and got a shoebox, put it at the bottom of the bookcase, and he goes, here, you can put it here. And I did. I had to throw the shoebox away later because it was falling apart. But so that's kind of like how it started. So when I got to the Olympic Games, you live in the village, the Olympic Village.
Where was it held that year?
Mexico City.
Mexico City, okay.
So when I got there, it still kind of, didn't resonate with me that this was a big deal. And then I walked into the campus and I went, oh, there's lots of people. Wow, not everybody speaks English. Okay, And so, but it still wasn't, my dad kept saying, it's just a big diving meet, don't worry about it. So there was people from all over the world, from Germany, Russia, and Egypt, and everywhere, that I was diving against. But it was just like a big diving meet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except, in the buildings where the women stayed, there was a barbed wire fence surrounding us, and there was 3 buildings. Oh. And in one of it was like a condominium. One of the buildings had your communist countries. And then the other building in the middle was the non-communist countries. And then another building was those that they couldn't make up their mind what they were. They weren't really sure.
Right.
So, but they're all really nice people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had my event. I dove, and then I wasn't feeling well. I had gotten sick actually at the games. And so after my event, I packed up my stuff and I was going to go back to the dorm and go to sleep because I wasn't feeling well. And somebody said to me, no, you can't go because you might have done okay. And I said, all right, I'll wait. And so it came to find out that I was tied for second, but the Russian girl beat me by 0.35 of a point, which in the Olympics is not unusual.
Right, right.
I mean, you see swimming races and track races where everybody's like fractions of seconds apart. And so they said, okay, now you got to go take your drug test, so you go to the bathroom and they give you a bottle with an opening about the size of a quarter that you have to pee into. That was challenging, and they actually have to watch you pee into this bottle. So there's a woman in there watching you.
Oh, okay.
Which took forever because it's embarrassing. At 17, watching somebody pee. I got that done. So then we're going out into the pool deck, and they said, okay, now you got to wear your USA sweats. And I went, oh, that's a problem. I had traded my sweats away to this gal from Poland, and her sweats was all white with this big red letters across your chest that said Polska. And I went, okay, I don't think I can wear that on the podium.
Right.
So the swimmer was next to me, and I said, and he was wearing his sweats. I said, hey, give me your shirt. So he gave me his sweat shirt that said USA, and I said, okay, give me your pants. And he goes, oh, I don't have anything under it. I said, okay, never mind. This will have to do. So, walked around, got my medal, and it still wasn't quite hit me, at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was that big of a deal. And I didn't really have any expectations of winning or anything like that. I was there, I competed, and I was going to go home. Right. To me, it still wasn't a big deal. And even my parents didn't make it a big deal either. I don't even recall them saying, well, congratulations, you did really good. My mother grabbed the medal and bit it, and she goes, is this real? And I went, I don't know. I said, but it's yours. I said, you earned it. My parents they sacrificed so much.
But that's amazing to me, Keala. I mean, it sounds like you didn't feel the notorious pressure.
No.
Is that really?
Yeah. Well, I didn't have any expectations of winning either. Because my parents and people around me never came up to me and congratulated me and never made a big deal about it. So, and I was too busy with, Punahou gives so much homework.
Well, yeah.
So between the homework and training, there was not much time to think about anything else. And soon as I got back from the Olympics, I had tons of homework to catch up on. So I was going to school on Saturdays. I think Mr. Lee was a chemistry teacher. Yeah. And I was in one day and I was doing an experiment. And he says, oh, I got to run up to the office. I'll be back. So he runs out of the classroom, leaves me. And I think I was really tired and I wasn't reading the book properly and I mixed the wrong chemicals. And this billowing smoke came out of the flask. covered the whole office, going out the windows. You would have thought there was a fire going on. And Mr. Lee saw this, and he comes running down, thinking the building's on fire, because here I am, and I'm going, Mr. Lee, what's going on? And he's going, what's going on? I went, I don't know. He goes, don't worry about it. He says, you pass.
Well, at least he said you passed. That's the important thing.
Yeah. He was sweet. He was really sweet. Yeah.
But so I'm listening to your story, and I'm so amazed that you didn't feel the kind of pressure that I don't know. I think so many young kids in athletics these days feel so keenly. Do you think there was less pressure when you were growing up, or was it just you, the way your parents handled it, or was it Wally Nakamoto, or what was it that allowed you to handle this in such a kind of a psychologically even-keeled way?
Yeah. Well, being the youngest of 5, and my brothers were quite athletic and were quite accomplished. And so they really didn't pay attention to me at all, because everybody was pretty good athletically. Right. So they kind of kept me down, but my whole family is very athletic. Yeah. So nobody was bigger than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And if you tried to get bigger than anybody else, they certainly put you in your place.
So they weren't so impressed by you?
No, not at all. They never mentioned it. And
That's amazing.
In fact, they never came to any of my meets.
Oh.
Either.
Did anyone accompany you from your family to the Olympics?
Well, prior to the Olympics, we had to go to training. We had to go to training camp up at Colorado Springs Air Force Academy to get used to the altitude. Right. Because of the thin air. Yeah. And so I was there about 4 to 6 weeks before the event. So when I was there, unfortunately, my coach couldn't come. Oh. Because they chose back then they chose the Olympic coaches ahead of time, and my coach wasn't chosen. So basically, I was training myself while we were up there. And that was a challenge, because being at a young age and not having my coach, I pretty much just coached myself when I was there. Okay. So that was probably the hardest part, was I didn't have my coach when I was there. He arrived the day before the meet. Okay. But it was kind of too late. There was really nothing he could do at that time. Right. My mom had never seen me dive, because she was taking care of the other 4 kids. Oh. So my dad was the only one who saw me dive. She never came to any of my meets. Okay. So that was the very first time she ever saw me dive, when I was at the Olympics. And she was there the day before, and I was diving, and then I went up to meet them to have dinner, and she said to me, honey, you're kind of close to the board. Do you know that? I went, no, but I know now. And my dad was saying, don't say that. But she had never seen me dive at all. Because like I say, I was the youngest, and so she was busy taking care of the other 4. And they were in football, basketball, baseball and all that stuff.
No one else was in diving?
No. No. I was the only one in the water sport. Everybody else was land. Okay. Yeah, well, to all those parents out there who hover over their little darlings as they, like soccer, whatever it is, maybe the answer to this whole kind of psychological pressure upon young kids is what they might be called benign neglect. Yeah. You just don't pay that much attention, and they come out, I'm assuming, psychologically healthy, like yourself, at least in regards to competition. Well, I think what they tried to stress was, okay, diving is what you do. It's not who you are. Okay. So for the Olympics, I was a diver and I'm Olympian, but that's what I did. That's not who I am. Who I am is part of that. But I see so many of my friends who were Olympians, they live Olympics in their lives. And I figured after the Olympics, I said, okay, I'm done. Now what can I do? It wasn't something, I didn't need to do it again and again and again. And there was a lot of young people there at the Olympics on the American team who felt a lot of pressure. And there was this one gal, she cried all the time. She cried before practice. She cried after practice. She was crying all the time. And finally I said to her, you need to stop. you know, you need to stop crying, okay, because it's not helpful, you know. But she felt so much pressure because she was a world-class athlete, swimmer.
Right.
And she felt that she would be letting her town down, her parents down, you know, I didn't feel that at all, you know. And so I just felt proud to represent Hawaii. That was my only pressure.
Okay.
Is that I felt very proud that I was from Hawaii. In fact, some of the people on my team didn't know Hawaii was a state.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said, "Where are you from?" And when Hawaii, they go, "Oh, where is that?" You know, I'm going, "Well, we're the 50th state," you know, and this is my team, American team, you know. And some people just weren't aware.
Now, did you make any like deep friendships at the time? Of course, you were only 17, but do you keep in contact with any of the other people that were on the Olympic team with you?
Yeah, I do with a couple of them.
Okay.
That they come and visit now and then, and I visit them as well. They were all older than me, so they kind of all mothered me.
Oh,
you know, they helped me with my homework. I can't believe Punahou sent me to the Olympics with my homework, reading Shakespeare and all that other stuff. I mean, before I left for training camp, they came with all my books. I had to go pick up all my books that I had to read. And so it was kind of nice because I would read Shakespeare and I go, I have no idea. So they would explain it to me. Okay, that means he slept with his mother and then he killed him and this kid that, you know. And so I went, really? That's what it says? So they were kind of like my teachers when I was there.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's really wonderful. Now, in this decision for you to not go on past the Olympics, was that a hard decision to make, or was it like, I'm over it?
It wasn't a difficult decision because back then you had to be an amateur. You couldn't have sponsors. Like now, you could have a Nike sponsor or Cheerios or, you know, or chapstick or Speedo sponsor. You can do it now. Back then, you couldn't. So it was prohibitively expensive to do that because the only competition I could get was I had to travel to the mainland. Yeah. Whereas kids in the mainland, they could just drive. Yeah. They, you know, get in their car and they drive, you know, from Texas to New Mexico or whatever. Whereas I had to fly. And so every time we flew, it was expensive. On one of my trips, I think it was to Pittsburgh, round trip was $1,000. Yeah. You know, and it was I don't know how many times my dad mortgaged the house just to fund it. Oh my gosh. Me going and coming, you know. And at one meet, my coach even said, you know, every dive is worth $50, so you better make it count. And I went, oh, geez. All right. I mean, that's pressure.
Yeah, well, that's pressure of a kind. But I'm so astonished. I didn't even think about that kind of cost to your family, right, as well as to you.
Right. So actually, to quit, you know, or to stop was because, one, I had to go to work, make some money. I couldn't get a sponsor because if you got a sponsor, they would take away your medal, which they did to other athletes as well. And I think it was in the 90s when they changed that because we were all complaining that, you know, when we go to the Olympics, we are competing against professional athletes. The European nation, they're government sponsored. Yeah. You know, so they paid for everything, whereas we had to pay for everything our own way because we were considered amateurs. And not professionals. Yeah. So that's why you didn't see people going to multiple Olympics like they do now. Right. Right now, you see people go to 2-3 Olympic Games. Sure. Well, because that's their job. Yeah. They have a sponsor that takes care of their expenses, that pays them. So that's all they do. They train and they practice. You know, they don't have to go to work. Right. Well, when I came back, you know, there were bills to pay. So, you know, I had to go to work and, you know, and my parents at least helped them out. Yeah. A little bit. Right. You know, and be on my own. So. Yeah. Well, that's great. You know, it's funny because in just this morning's paper, there's an interview with Carissa Moore about her retirement. And I just got a little clip of it, and it says, she says, all those wins, the competitive part, that's so much of my identity, I'm taking that away and I'm facing myself this year, and that's scary. So she asks, who am I? Am I going to be okay? Will I be able to love myself and think that I'm worthy without this?
How do you react to a statement like that? And this is nothing about Carissa Moore, but it is something about young people in sports these days, in competitive sports at a very high level, as she is. And I guess she's stepping away to maybe try motherhood or something like that. But what do you think about a statement like Carissa Moore's?
Well, Carissa, from what I understand, started at a very young age, surfing at a very young age. So she had been doing it for quite a while, you know. And then, of course, she had sponsors, so she had to show up at different events. And your sponsorship, you know, how you get sponsored, from what I understand, is based upon how your standings. You know, if you're winning, or at least in the top, you know, top 2, 3, or 4, then your sponsor continues to sponsor you to whatever meets you have to go to and pays your expenses. So the pressure, it's like a job. So the pressure is to continue to perform.
Right.
And you can't say, well, I'm tired, I think I'm going to skip these next 2 events. You can't do that. You know, so you're obligated,
right,
you know, to continue doing what you're doing. And if you're used to winning and you don't win, you know, for whatever reason, and there's many reasons, you feel like you've let those people down, or you may lose your sponsorship.
Right.
You know, so there's a different type of pressure. Whereas in my particular case, there was no money involved. I wasn't obligated to anybody. It was just all me.
Right.
So people who go into professional sports now, that's a job. Yeah. That is their job. They have to perform. I didn't. You know, I did it because I loved it. And that's why I did it. I didn't because there was any financial gain to it. Although I now realize that it has opened a lot of doors for me that I would not have had the opportunity. You know, when I go for an interview, the people who do know me, I think look at me a little differently in a better light. So I think it's opened doors for me that would not have happened had I not accomplished that.
Right. I mean, my assumption is that if you are going to an interview and they know that you achieved something like an Olympics medal, that they would take you as somebody who knows to accomplish something, who knows how to achieve something. How do you teach that?
With a hammer. Like when I was kind of hard on my kids, actually, you know, because, you know, you have to do what I did, you have to be extremely disciplined and committed. Yeah. You know. Yeah. And so what if you don't feel well? Well, it doesn't matter. You have to get up and perform. So you learn to work hard. You learn discipline. You learn that, you are going to fail sometimes, but that's not it's the end of the world. You just got to pick yourself up and keep going. I think what a lot of the younger athletes, what they have trouble with is with failure. And they look at failure as, and it affects them. You know, I see golfers who, if they have a bad day, they just, a bad couple holes, the whole day is shot. Right. And then you have others who maybe they didn't do well at the beginning, but they're clutch players, and they rise to the occasion. And you cannot teach that. You either have it or you don't. I taught at Punahou for many years, and I would have divers who were fabulous in practice. Right. And then when you got to the meet, it was like,
they fall apart.
They fall apart. And it's difficult to teach them not to fall apart. It's kind of part of who they are, And parents at the time were kind of pushy. Yeah. Like, how come you didn't do this? How come you do that? My parents never said anything. I would win a national meet, and they'd come home. They go, okay, dinner's on the table, and don't forget to wash the dishes when you're done. And so I had chores. We don't have time to think about what you just did. And there's a shoebox. Put your medal in the shoebox. So it wasn't. It wasn't. They didn't make it to be a big deal. So I thought, I guess it's okay. It's not a big deal.
But these are kinds of lessons that lots of parents these days could really benefit by learning. Yeah. And what you said earlier, I think, is so important. What you do versus who you are, right. And those are separate things. Exactly. And I think this is all part of your own personal grounding. So it sounds like to me, and hearing you talk, I'm just impressed by that lesson. Whether your parents were intentional about it or not, this is how you grew up.
Yes.
And this is how, even within that, not even within that, maybe especially within that, you were able to achieve something for you. Mm-hmm. And so, I think I learned something today.
Well, I think the lesson I learned was diving in Olympics is what I did. It's not who I am.
Yep.
I mean, who I am accomplished that. Mm-hmm. But, I don't live my life there. I have other things that I live my life for. I live my life for my family,
Right.
For, things that to me are much more important.
Yeah. With that, I just want to thank you so much for sharing all these stories. As I said, I learned a lot by this, and I wish I could broadcast this to all the parents who are pushing their little children in this way or that. But, thank you so much, Keala.
You're certainly welcome, and thank you.
Mahalo for listening. This has been Kupunaho, a talk story podcast by, for, and about us, the Punahou Class of 69. I'm your host, Cristiano, with production help from Carlene Tani and Sue Au Doyle. I hope that listening to these interviews might prompt each of us to reflect on those pivotal experiences and insights that make up our own lives and to share them with families and friends. This is our responsibility, our ongoing legacy. So, until next time, ahui ho.